What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel and another Outriders video. Now with the release of the reveal trailer for Worldslayer, we definitely have an idea of the things that are coming with this expansion. New weapons, new story content, new endgame activity, new currencies, changes to mods, new mods, the packs trees and all of that. So there's literally a slew of new things which are coming to the game. However, it's also become apparent things that we were maybe looking forward to, some quality of life changes perhaps, that we were hoping that were going to be within this expansion are in actual fact not coming, or maybe it's better to say not coming right now. So I thought today we could actually look at these, and without any further ado, I think the first place that we can look at is essentially a post on the Reddit for Outriders, and specifically by the community manager TheArcan, which was dealing with a request or a question that was posted by someone saying, you know, what about some of these core quality of life things that we've been asking for a long time. Now let's look quickly at the post and then we'll deal with each one of these things individually. So essentially the question was, you know, hi community managers, any word on core quality of life updates players have been asking for a long time. So TheArcan responded by saying, good questions. While one part of our team focused on Worldslayer, another part focused on quality of life updates and improvements. Most of that quality of life work went into the free New Horizon update, which was released last year. So in essence saying that most of the things that they were going to do, at least this is how I'm reading it, that they were going to do from a quality of life perspective was actually already done. Now with Worldslayer, we wanted to by and large focus on new content and systems, as well as work in the bug fixes and existing tech improvements that have been worked on since New Horizons. So the focus with Worldslayer and with this expansion is not so much towards quality of life though, but rather new content, new things, in other words something that they can sell, right? Because this DLC of course has a price attached to it, it's not free, so something that they can sell. And while me as a long-time player of the game, I would probably pay, I don't know, I'm crazy like that, I would probably pay a little bit of money to get these quality of life improvements. The point is, like, quality of life improvements generally don't sell a game or sell an expansion. It needs to be new content. And so from a business perspective, I get it. It makes sense that that is the primary focus for them with Worldslayer. Now here we come with the main thing, and that is to say Worldslayer will at this time not be adding in-game chat, loadouts, or item locking. We know that these highly desired features, or sorry, we know that these are highly desired features, but to focus on them would have compromised parts of Worldslayer. It's often been a question of work on either this thing or work on that thing, rather than being able to work on both things at once. And I think what's also kind of like in between the lines being said here is that, remember, we're not dealing with a studio that has 400 people, 200 people. I don't know how big People Can Fly studio, specifically the part of it that's dedicated to Outriders is. But the point there is, by this comment, it is being said that, and oftentimes they have to choose between which one of the two things they do. Let's say, for instance, on the one side prioritizing a specific quality of life issue like in-game chat, and then the other side, you know, packs, you know, packs points, or the packs, you know, table, or that making it into the game. So I think that's what it is. And then last but not least, there's also more stash base that's being mentioned, but I'm just going to sort of summarize this next section. Of course you can read the whole thing, it's on the screen right now, but the point is that what they're also saying is stash base is actually, it seems to me, like the one that they've experimented with the most and actually tried to look at. And unfortunately, something that they realized is by just increasing the stash base, they were actually messing with the stability of the game, the build of the game. And this was doing, you know, all kinds of things, from game instability to essentially seeing, you know, massive increases in load times and all of that. And I don't know what else could possibly come from that. But it definitely seems that out of these four things that we just mentioned right now, you know, stash base is maybe the one that they've started diving into the most to potentially see. And maybe that's indicative of the thing that out of these four quality of life improvements, increased stash base might be the one that we have the biggest chance of seeing the soonest if things pan out in a certain way. So when it comes to these four, now that we know what's coming with Worldslayer, but also just my general opinion about these four, I think first and foremost, when we talk about in-game chat, I have to say this is probably the one out of the four that I care the least about. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's the one that I care the least about. And I think The reason for that is probably because when I play the game, and if I am communicating with people, I'm usually playing with people that I know, and so there's usually Discord servers involved and, you know, things like that. But I understand, and that's also because I'm playing on PC. Now I understand that that's easy for me to say because I don't play with a lot of randoms, but I'm sure that there's a lot of players, especially console players, that play pickup games where they have randoms, and it would be nice to be able to at the very least communicate with these people, even if there's not voice, but rather just like an in-game chat or just being able to post something. I think that that's probably one of the more complicated of these four to actually put into the game, so it's also the one that I think we stand the least likely chance of seeing. But be that as it may, I understand how this can be important for some people, and it certainly does increase the social aspect of the game. But to me, this is the least important one of the four, and not really one that I'm so sort of like bent out of shape about. Now, when we come to loadouts and item locking, in a way we can talk about them in the same breath. But the point is that when it comes to item locking, of course, there has been an issue with players, you know, unintentionally deleting their items or selling items, or I mean, that's far less of a problem, but you know, unintentionally deleting items, you know, sometimes guard rolls, sometimes the best items that they had, by, you know, accidentally hitting the delete key and, you know, having that item selected and deleting a group, or, you know, whatever that may happen. Now, I can say that that's never actually happened to me, at least not that I can remember. Maybe it was so you know, so like emotional damage that I ended up getting, you know, like I ended up wiping my memory from it. But I can't recall ever having this happen to me. But I'm, even to this day, I'm just so super anal, and like I check and I see, okay, cool, which items have I selected and everything like that. I also think that it's probably easier to have this accidentally happen on consoles where you know, might unintentionally hold in one of the buttons and, you know, all of that. But then again, that's, you know, that's neither here nor there. It is an actual fact that it has happened to people and they've accidentally deleted things. And in a game like Outriders, which is a looter shooter where you have a stash of 100 items and you have multiple slots available on each character, and you're carrying lots and lots of different gear pieces and alternates and different weapons and different qualities of weapons and all of that, it is entirely possible that you might fuck up and accidentally delete something. So it is a shame that there isn't an item locking feature there. Now, for me, the workaround to this simply has been that ever since the inclusion of transmog, I simply just, as soon as I see an interesting piece of gear, I transmog it, which gives it the unique little, you know, sort of symbol in the edge of the portrait. And that then just kind of triggers my brain. Whenever I see something having been transmogged, I automatically just, I'm very careful around it, and I don't delete anything. But that's a workaround, and that's a player workaround. That's something that we as players have, you know, agreed and said, you know what, that's probably a good idea to keep track of that. To the point where I use one specific transmog for essentially everything, and that's just another way how I sort of trigger my brain. But it is a shame that this isn't something that's coming, because what I do like about the idea of a lock is, if I'm, for instance, on a Thursday night doing these carry streams and we're hanging out with people and we're going through expeditions quite fast, I oftentimes don't want to, and this is just a me thing, right? I often don't want to sit and waste viewers' time by going through items and going, you know, should I keep this? Do I have something better? I need to switch to another character quickly and check, anything like that. So it definitely would be more comfortable for me to just go lock, and I'm like, okay, cool, now I know I can continue on. And then at the end of the night, when everything's done and dusted, we're done with the stream, I can come back to my characters, go, oh yeah, here's these 8 items I locked, let me look at them. But in any case, it's a shame that this didn't make it in. I don't know how difficult it is to implement this, but it kind of feels to me like it's one of those things that should be there in a game that handles as much loot as this game, and where loot is so important. Now that brings us to loadouts, and loadouts is another thing where at the moment right now all 6 my character slots are filled. And that's because when it comes to Pyromancer, I have multiple versions of builds, or different kinds of builds that I like playing. I'm a Pyro main, so I have, at any given time, I have like 1 or 2 builds that I want to be trying out. I have like my core build that is for speed running. I have another build that's really good at carrying. I have another build that's some wacky firepower shit that I like to do. So the bottom line is, you end up carrying a lot of gear on you. And while, yes, you can transmog it and you can move it around, everything like that, when it comes to having that many builds, even just on one character, I've gotten to the point where I've had to screenshot everything and use tools and stuff like that to remember it for me. I used to write it all down on a page, like this and actually keep my builds organized like that, so that when I wanted to play a specific build, I could just take my notes and I could go like, okay, cool, it's this item, this item, this item, and I would identify everything either by their mods or whatever. Loadouts would absolutely make a lot of this so much easier, and even more so if loadouts would mean that you could actually store the outfit into the loadout and then have it maybe pull that gear from the stash instead of having to carry it on your character. Because this is the other problem. Once you actually have a character with, let's say for example, you're running around with a pyromancer that you have 4 builds on, so that's a lot of slots within that particular character that is now already filled by gear that you're carrying that you want to be able to swap to. That means that more often than not, you actually start running into maximums in those different slots, and then it starts dumping it to your stash. And if your stash is full, then it just auto deletes those items, which is also not good, because maybe there was something in there that you needed. So again, I feel like, yeah, loadouts to me is one of those things, again, when we're looking at the kind of game that Outriders is, and that it is primarily driven by loot, right? Then I would imagine that all of its best features need to hover around loot. It needs to hover around gear, make the accessibility of that gear easier, make the categorization and the storage and all of that gear better, which is unfortunately not the case. So this is a tough one for me, and yeah, it's one that I would dearly love to see come to the game, and it's a shame that it's not. That brings us last but certainly not least to stash, and more specifically increased stash space. Now, the other night on one of the streams, I had an interesting, I don't know if you could call it an epiphany or not, because it's not really. I mean, this isn't some, you know, smooth brain thinking right here, but I had a discussion with a viewer. We were talking about the fact that not increased stash space is coming, and this is such a big deal for players that this is in some cases being, and whether this is truthful or not is, I don't know, regardless of the fact, but people comment on Reddit and in my videos and in other people's videos that just because of this one feature not being looked at, more stash space, they're considering not playing the expansion. They're considering not picking it up because their stashes are full. They have 6 characters. Those characters, their inventories are full. So it's a fuck show. Now, I don't know if this was people can fly directly trying to deal with this issue, but of course, with the inclusion of 3 mod capable items now, both from weapons and an armor perspective, it means that essentially everything that you might be hoarding right now, right, is useless. Now, I'm imagining a situation, and I'm probably dead wrong about this, and that's why I haven't cleaned out my inventories just yet. But I imagine a situation that maybe there is a crafting resource in the game that once you level up your weapons to your weapons or your purple gear or your armor or your legendaries or whatever to level 75, that you could potentially introduce a random 3rd mod to it. This has not been confirmed or anything like that. I just imagine there could potentially be a different resource to drop pod resources or something like that that comes from this new endgame activity, and maybe this resource allows for that. Again, unsubstantiated, and this is more like a hope from me from my side, because again, a guard roll is potentially a guard roll. You know, a guard roll at 50 is potentially still a guard roll at 75, depending on how the scaling works when you actually level those weapons up. And so that would be cool if that was the case, but let's imagine a world where it's not. That means that in essence right now, it is actually okay for you to completely wipe out your stash and delete everything. Because the point is that whether you have a guard roll, you know, death shield, or, you know, whatever guard roll you have, I think a guard roll death shield doesn't matter, but I just pulled death shield from the top of my head. But whatever guard roll weapon you have, the point is that if during the time that you're playing Worldslayer, the minute you pick up a 3rd slot version of that, even if it's slightly less damage or anything like that, it is a better weapon than that guard roll one, because you have this 3rd mod slot, and as long as that 3rd mod is not complete ass, it's just a better weapon for that. And the same is true for armor, of course. So I don't know if this was a move from their side to essentially make it so that people can essentially look at all of this shit they've been hoarding for a year and go, this is all fucking trash because it doesn't have a 3rd mod slot, who gives a fuck, and throw it out, right? And maybe that was, and that's kind of like a cute way of solving the problem, because immediately you have, you know, if I right now just go and get rid of everything that's not a god roll, I'm easily going to open up like 50% to maybe 60-70% to my stash, because I keep a lot of items as well that aren't necessarily god rolls but have good mod combinations. But those will be worse than something else that has the exact same mod combination but then a third mod as well. So this solves the problem potentially in the short run. But what happens 3 months, I don't know how long it takes, a month or whatever, into Worldslayer? Because now not only do we have all this old gear, but we also have 100 new pieces of gear coming into the game. So we have like new armor sets per class, we have universal sets coming in, we have new legendary weapons. So the gear is in actual fact increasing. So there's even more reason for us to hoard. And the point is, what happens when you get to the point where now you start reliably getting third mod gear? And so now you start hoarding these, and right smack dab, we're back to the original problem. So again, stash space was kind of like an important one for me. I can't sit here and pretend I know what it's like to code something like this into a game, or how difficult or how easy it would be. I've always in the back of my mind thought that, hey, you know, you always make that joke and, you know, just add a 0 somewhere and, you know, just increase the stash space. But I know it's not that simple. The bottom line is, when it comes to item locking, loadouts, and stash space, this is something that's so important to various members in the community, including me, that in my case, it doesn't necessarily drive me away from the game, but it certainly makes me go like, shit. Because it is really something, or some things, that I hope that they would have addressed with Worldslayer, especially due to Worldslayer being slightly more expensive, I think, than people thought it was going to be. And so in those cases, people usually hope that something that they've been asking for or complaining about for more than a half a year or 6 months, you know, 8 months, whatever, actually makes it into the expansion. But unfortunately, no, it's not the case. That's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, especially if you made it this far, let me know in the comments down below which one of these 4, you know, what else I should have included in this list that you know that I might not know about, or that actually upsets you more that it's not included in the game, or just in general, tell me how you feel about these things. Unfortunately, I wish I could bring you good news today, but it has basically all but 100% been confirmed that unfortunately these 4 things don't make it into the game, and it does make me a little bit sad. That's it. Again, it's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, a great afternoon, and a super awesome evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me.